one of you to meeting number 26 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. As you all know, today's meeting is taking place once again in a hybrid format pursuant to the the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, so you are all aware. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few points to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are in fact available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in one of the committee rooms on the Hill. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed to the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can, as we always do, to maintain the order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on October 29, 2020, the committee will now proceed, continue its study on targeted infrastructure investments. I would now like to welcome our witnesses and introduce the witnesses to all of you. First off, we have from Quebec Core Media Inc., Pierre-Carl Pellado, President and Chief Executive Officer. From Videotron, we have Jean-Francois Pruneau, President and Chief Executive Officer. I understand both will be making a presentation together. Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology, we have Mr. Barry Field, the Executive Director. And finally, from Telesat, we have Stephen Hampton, Manager, Government Affairs and Public Policy, as well as Michelle Beck, Vice President of Sales, North America. To all of you, welcome. And I will start off our presentations, 5 minutes each, with Mr. Pellado and Mr. Pruneau. Gentlemen, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, members, my name is Pierre-Carl Pellado, and I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of Quebecor, and I have with me my colleague Jean-Francois Pruneau, President and CEO of Videotron. So, over the past more than 55 years now, Videotron has been demonstrating its unflagging commitment to the development of infrastructure throughout Quebec and in Eastern Ontario. Propelled by local talent, our company has played a frontline role in the country's economic ecosystem. The mark that our company has left on Quebec's economic development and its regions is undeniable. And of course, we intend to continue in this direction. The billions of dollars invested in our telecommunications networks and in new technologies speak for themselves. In addition to injecting a wind of change into the country's telecommunications sector, we have been able to set up a network that is recognized worldwide for its reliability and its strength. The last several months that we've gone through collectively demonstrate the caliber of our infrastructure. If we are here today, it is to reiterate our willingness to participate in the country's economic recovery. While the next few months are likely to be difficult, they also represent an unprecedented opportunity that Quebecor and Videotron are prepared to contribute to. In recent years, we have stepped forward on several occasions to present solutions to better serve our fellow citizens experiencing connectivity issues or suffering from a lack of competition in their area. One need only think of our investments by Videotron to serve the citizens of Abitibi, who for decades had been suffering under a high-cost monopoly maintained by Bell and its regional subsidiaries. Between now and the end of 2022, Videotron, in collaboration with the two levels of government, will connect more than 37,000 Quebec households who currently do not have access to high-speed internet. This commitment is the largest among all the telecommunications companies present in Quebec. It is clear, and we have demonstrated this, we want to and we can compete against the major national players, and we have the firm intention of continuing along those lines. If Quebecers are paying less than elsewhere in the country for their telecommunications services, if they have access to the best customer experiences, it is thanks to Videotron, who forced the hand of the three national giants who otherwise would have continued to provide less service at a higher price, as is the case in the rest of Canada. In order to achieve these results, Videotron has been investing more than $1.5 billion since 2008 in building and developing its network, as well as $1.2 billion for the acquisition of mobile frequencies, which went directly to the public treasury. We wish to continue investing so that more Canadians may have access to leading-edge technology at a fair price. However, Videotron can only fully fulfill its role to the extent that the regulators and political decision-makers ensure that the major national players cannot take advantage of their dominant position to threaten the competition based on their installations. The CRTC followed suit in this sense last week by publishing two decisions favorable to that approach, one of them concerning mobile virtual service operators, otherwise known as MVNOs, and that of access to support structures of Bell, essentially the famous telephone poles. Last Friday's decision concerning the access to Bell telephone poles is unequivocal. Bell contravened many regulations and knowingly violated the Telecommunications Act when we consider its anti-competitive practices to block access to its support structures and thereby harm the efforts of Videotron to provide an additional choice for the benefit of consumers in Canada. This decision was rendered following representations made by Videotron and reaffirmed by many stakeholders such as municipalities and other telecommunications service providers who for several months now have been denouncing these unfair tactics. The CRTC decision is clear and unambiguously concludes that the preference which Bell gave itself and the disadvantage imposed on Videotron are undue and unreasonable, and all of this accompanied with financial penalties that may amount to up to $10 million. The effects of its anti-competitive behavior are particularly serious. If Bell's opposition is not eliminated once and for all, our collective ambition of finally connecting the entire Canadian population will become unfeasible, and the digital gap between our fellow citizens living in rural areas from those who live in urban areas will continue. Needless to say, in order to respond to collective pressure, Bell has recently claimed to have improved its operational processes. That is all very well, but one thing remains for sure. It is essential that the governments maintain that pressure on Bell regarding access to its support infrastructure and should even question the possibility of applying significant sanctions in the event that Bell might refuse to comply with the legislation, as is all too often the case. Bell's dominance is not the only threat to competition relating to installations, because the recently proposed transaction by Rogers to acquire Shaw also represents such an obstacle. In fact, the approval of that transaction in its current form would inevitably result in having to go back to the drawing board and eliminating the fourth essential stakeholder in maintaining true competition in the Canadian wireless market. This would also go against the recent decision of the CRTC concerning MRNOs, in which the Commission wrote that the conclusion of its decision, and I quote, would favor innovation and ongoing investment in high-quality telecommunications installations, as well as affordable access to these facilities in all regions of Canada, including rural and remote areas, and would foster lasting competition, resulting in benefits such as affordable prices and innovative services for Canadians, and will reduce obstacles to entering the market. Close quote. Furthermore, this is why we demand that the main transaction, grouping together the wireline networks, be subject to the transfer of the assets of Freedom Mobile and include the necessary conditions for efficient operation of a wireless network, including spectrum, ownership, roaming agreements, and the sharing of towers for a fair agreement for the use of the wireline network, or what we call in the jargon the backhaul. So, in conclusion, Mr. Chair, the economic prosperity of Canada and the well-being of all Canadians depends in a large part on the capacity of builders of telecommunications networks such as Videotron to deploy their networks and provide their services without being hampered in a stiff competition context, but a fair one. It is, as a result, crucial that the regulators and political decision-makers ensure that the major international players not be able to take advantage of their dominant position to threaten competition based on installations, so that the entire Canadian population may benefit from a competitive environment, many choices, and lower prices for telecommunications services. Thank you for your attention.
To representative from Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology, Mr. Barry Field, Executive Director. Mr. Field, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and honorable committee members, my name is Barry Field. I'm the Executive Director of Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology, commonly referred to as SWIFT. SWIFT is a nonprofit regional broadband program. Our mandate is to eliminate the digital divide within Southwestern Ontario. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in your important deliberations. SWIFT has recently completed the procurement phase of our first program called SWIFT 1.0. The program is funded equally by the governments of Canada and Ontario, each contributing $64 million. SWIFT is grateful for these contributions and works diligently to ensure that these public funds are spent in the most effective, efficient, and equitable means possible. The primary goal of the SWIFT program is to provide broadband services to 50,000 underserved premises within the SWIFT catchment area on or before June 2023. Secondary goals include ensuring 3,100 kilometers of new fiber construction and $65.5 million of private sector investment in the form of contributions from the Internet Service Providers, or ISPs. Upon the conclusion of the procurement phase of our program, SWIFT has exceeded all of these targets and is currently working with the ISPs to implement these important projects. The SWIFT 1.0 program has exceeded the premises target by 27%, the fiber construction target by 37%, and the private sector investment target by 98%. It's important to note that the digital divide in Canada exists for one simple reason. There's a general market failure in this space. The high cost of implementing fast, reliable broadband infrastructure in rural areas with low population density is not offset by the requisite revenues that would make the investment profitable. Simply put, the ISPs have no profit motive to invest in these areas. There is a patchwork of nonprofit cooperatives that do an incredible job of addressing rural broadband service gaps, but they're generally small and localized operations, not in a position to address such issues on a national scale. This is where the government must step in. Subsidy programs targeted to reduce the cost of implementing and in some cases maintaining broadband infrastructure are necessary. The federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government across the country get this. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, I spent a lot of time talking to policymakers about why broadband is important. Since the pandemic, this conversation has shifted away from why it's needed to how much it's going to cost and what's the most efficient and effective means of solving it is. Recently, the province of Ontario has announced an additional $2.8 billion worth of broadband funding. This brings their total current broadband commitment to $3.8 billion. Yesterday, in the federal budget, we learned that the federal government has committed an additional $1 billion to the Universal Broadband Fund. This is above and beyond the $1.75 billion already committed in the UBF and is in addition to other federal programs. Municipal governments across the country have also answered the call with their own local commitments. Here in southwestern Ontario, the member municipalities of SWIFT have contributed $24 million to date and are committed to future funding currently under consideration. Again, all levels of government understand the need and the financial commitment required to resolve this issue. But what's missing is a coordinated approach at the local level to address this problem. I recently argued in front of the industry committee that one size does not fit all when it comes to broadband programs. What I meant by that was that there are regional differences in requirements, current state, and implementation realities that all come into play with respect to broadband. Effective programs need to take into account local requirements and differences. Also, the current patchwork of broadband programs, all trying to solve a small piece of the problem, is not the most effective or efficient means to address the digital divide. Within southwestern Ontario today, there are no less than 5 active government programs, all trying to solve the same problem in the same geography.
1 minute, Barry.
If we were to go back to the drawing board, with the goal of designing a national broadband program, the result would not look like this. It's far more effective and efficient to consolidate funds into a single program to address the entire problem as a whole, rather than to have 4 or 5 disparate programs running in parallel. I urge all 3 levels of government to coordinate their efforts and to consolidate programs with the goal of ensuring that every Canadian, regardless of geography, has access to fast, reliable, and affordable internet. I thank you once again for the opportunity to speak here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Well done. We're now going to move on to representatives from Telesat. We have Mr. Stephen Hampton, Manager of Government Affairs and Public Policy, and Michelle Beck, Vice President of Sales, North America. Folks, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, good evening, and thank you for inviting Telesat to appear today. My name is Michelle Beck. I'm the Vice President of North American Sales at Telesat, and I'm here with my colleague Stephen Hampton, Manager of Government Affairs. Je tiens à remercier le comité.
I wish to thank the committee for having undertaken this important study on infrastructure investment, especially in telecommunications. When we refer to broadband connectivity, it's the internet, mobile, LTE, and 5G networks that we depend on a day-to-day basis, and the more so since the beginning of the current pandemic. This brought out inequalities in terms of access to internet in Canada, where rural populations and Indigenous and remote communities are the most seriously affected. This gap continues to exist, and we must immediately take measures to break the digital gap by finding solutions and technologies that can be quickly deployed and that can foster affordable connectivity of high quality as soon as possible. The telecommunications networks represent an essential infrastructure for economic growth and social inclusion. Governments throughout the world have understood this and have been investing significantly in their connectivity infrastructure in order to benefit from the economic spin-offs generated every year. We thank the committee for having included telecommunications in this study.
Is one of the largest and most innovative global satellite operators and a proud Canadian company with over 50 years of experience flying and operating satellites from our headquarters here in Ottawa. Today, we transmit hundreds of high-definition television channels to millions of Canadians, provide broadband and other lifeline services to rural, remote, and Indigenous communities, and deliver mission-critical services to Canada's security and public safety community. And we offer these same types of services all around the world. In February, we officially announced the most ambitious and innovative project of our long history, a 6.5 billion state-of-the-art low Earth orbit, or LEO, satellite constellation known as Telesat Lightspeed. Lightspeed will deliver significant economic and social benefits to Canada, including affordable high-speed broadband and LTE and 5G services throughout the entire country. Lightspeed will also deliver billions of dollars in economic growth, as well as support thousands of high-quality, high-paying jobs, largely in STEM in the Canadian aerospace sector. This comes at a time when economic investment and job creation have never been more important. Telesat Lightspeed is a perfect example of a targeted strategic infrastructure investment that will transform the economic and social landscape and ensure affordable, fiber-like broadband connectivity everywhere in Canada. We would like to commend governments across Canada for investing heavily in broadband infrastructure, notably the Government of Canada for its partnership with Telesat to bridge the digital divide through Lightspeed, as well as the Government of Quebec for its recently announced investment into the Lightspeed project. Telesat takes a holistic, community-focused approach to affordably connect Canadians by partnering with local ISPs, mobile operators, municipalities, and Indigenous communities. Lightspeed will provide affordable, high-capacity backbone connectivity to a community, and the local partner will provide the last-mile connectivity to households, schools, hospitals, small businesses, as well as LTE and 5G. The new space economy is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, with the global space industry estimated to nearly triple to over $1 trillion a year over the next 2 decades. Next generation satellite connectivity like Telesat Lightspeed is responsible for the majority of this growth and will seamlessly integrate with terrestrial broadband networks to provide affordable, ubiquitous, high-speed coverage globally. The new space economy will not only unlock true universal connectivity, but will deliver billions of dollars in economic benefits, innovation, IP generation, and job creation for Canada. Given the substantial economic and social benefits, governments all around the world are betting big on this industry and are meaningfully investing in domestic space and broadband capabilities. Telesat Lightspeed is the largest space program ever conceived in Canada and is the exact infrastructure investment Canada needs to bridge the digital divide and lead the world in the future of connectivity and the new space economy. Thank you very much.
I think you're on mute there, Mr. Chair.
You got me, Andrew. That's the first time in a long time. So
happens all of it.
Yes, it does. So first of all, we have our first round of questions. First, we have Mr. Scheer from the Conservatives for 6 minutes, followed by Mr. Iacono for 6 minutes, Mr. Barceau-Duval, and followed by him is the NDP, Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Scheer, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you very much to all the witnesses for some very in-depth presentations. I thought I maybe start off asking a question to Swift. Could you speak a little bit more about how you're structured, how you bring apart around different players together? Based on your testimony, I understand that you're not a for-profit company, but you're a program that's set up set up to catalyze these types of investments. So can you just help me understand exactly how your organization is modeled?
Mr. Field?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. SWIFT is it's a nonprofit organization that was developed by the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, or the WOW-C. The WOW-C is an organization comprised of 15 municipalities here in southwestern Ontario. In addition to the WOW-C, we've also been joined by 5 other non-participating municipalities. So we really are a creation of the municipalities. We are a municipal organization. We are a separate company underneath that organization.
Okay, great. One of the things that is we're kind of looking at in these various studies is how best the government can unlock some of the private sector investment in this and act as a catalyst. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is what we've seen with the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, where they've seemed to become a corporate welfare model. We just saw an announcement last week where they gave hundreds of millions of dollars to a profitable fork of a profitable energy company. How can we look at the telecommunications and broadband space and make sure that while we're trying to ensure that companies can make profits by providing a service, that we don't end up picking winners and losers and getting into that space where we're subsidizing profitable companies?
Mr. Field?
Thank you. So one of the things that SWIFT does is we actually run an independent business case analysis on any application we receive for funding. Very complicated process, but I'll make it quick here. Effectively, what we do is we look at the payback period of the investment, and if we find that the investment without SWIFT subsidy would have a payback period of less than 7 years, we don't touch it. So anything over 7 years, we will subsidize. But if it's under 7 years, we figure somebody's going to do that project on their own, so we will not subsidize it.
Mr. Chair?
Fair enough. To Monsieur Pellado, you referenced a recent CRTC decision regarding Bell and issues around telephones. Can you tell the committee how long it took the CRTC to come to a decision on that ruling?
Mr. Pellado?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, we've been going for many months regarding what we consider being issues that we're facing in the telecommunication world. Certainly, there's a lot of influence taking place in Ottawa regarding, how the former monopoly used to do business, and we've been trying, to convince. And in fact, we've been able also to provide facts to the fact that, when competition is available for Canadians, they had the chance to benefit from lower prices and some innovation. So basically, what you're maybe you would like to have my answer that is that the process fast enough. I guess that we will certainly always appreciate that it could go faster.
Yeah, and that is what I was getting at. I was honestly curious about that one particular issue, but I have heard from many companies involved in the telecommunications industry, and they say that the CRTC takes so long to make rulings sometimes about whether or not one of the big established telecoms have to provide access or for pricing mechanisms, what they're wholesaling it for, that the length of time often screens out some smaller companies. You talked about competition. I think it's incredibly important. Competition drives innovation, drives better service for customers, and it's something that the government should foster without kind of tipping the fingers on the scales. And so I guess that's a roundabout way of me saying that yes, that's exactly what I was getting at. Is in your view, would you say the CRTC itself, that the process itself, can act as a hindrance to competition? Is that something that policymakers should be looking at? How can we ensure that the CRTC makes some of these decisions in a timely, in a guaranteed timeline or a much shorter timeline?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pellado, may I request that you bring your boom mic up just a tad? You're popping a bit with the just up like a mustache. There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pelledo. Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll be to have a specific answer, Mr. Scheer. It took a year for the decision, and I guess that you're right to mention that fortunately, we certainly have some financial wherewithals that probably smaller company don't have. So then, therefore, I would say that there's always room to improve our capacity to take decisions. And sometimes, but I guess that that they can pick, what would be the important thing. But I remember that I was called very quickly in front of the CRTC because we had an argument regarding the agreement for the distribution of a sports channel that also provide competition to the equivalent of TSN, which is called TVA Sport here. So I guess that these are things that could happen, but again, there's always room to improve.
Thank you, Mr. Pelledo, and thank you, Mr. Scheer. We're now going to move on to the Liberals, to Mr. Iacona. And first off, before I give Mr. Iacona the floor, I want to welcome Angelo back to the committee. He was off for a few years on the committee last term. And Angelo, welcome back. It's great to have you on board. So, Mr. Iacona, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It is a great pleasure to be back. So, first of all, I wish to remind the committee that our government for years has been offsetting underinvestment in broadband investment for infrastructure because the previous government, the Conservative government, had chosen not to place priority on that sector. Since 2015, the government has set up programs that have made it possible for 1.4 million Canadian households to get high-speed internet connections. That's 4 times more households in comparison to the number which the previous Conservative government was able to connect up with its standard bearer flagship program. Mr. Pelledo, my first question. These investments in broadband technology, to what extent are they crucial for the economic recovery and prosperity of Canada?
Merci, Monsieur le Député.
Thank you, sir. Your question is very relevant. You're quite right to mention it. And I would also like to tell you, as I mentioned in my presentation, as you know, a telecommunications network has become, I would say, essential to ensure productivity in the industry of a country. I can give as an example Germany, which in fact mentioned several times the initiatives that were taken to reinvest in their telecommunications network, particularly in the field of internet access, in order to make sure, and we know historically, of course, the particular attention that the people in Germany may have with regard to their own industry and productivity, and it illustrates the need to make sure that the state and the governments can understand and provide for the benefit of the entire country, and of course, particularly stakeholders in the industry, to enable us to maintain our dominant position across the country and worldwide. And nevertheless, we have inherited what was for a long time a monopoly context, and we have to make sure that you, the political decision makers, have to be able to ensure that we can bring in the necessary tools to enable this competition, because it's the competition that drives innovation, and in particular that can be spread as widely as possible for the benefit of Canadians. Unfortunately, all too often, with the former monopolies, they had a tendency to want to stick with the monopoly, and that's why the responsibility that is incumbent on you is to break those monopolies and make sure that you bring in the necessary measures so that competition can exist and can thrive once again for the benefit of Canadians.
Merci.
Thank you. And you expressed that very well, that we as decision makers must bring change. So if, as you say, it's a sector that is still underfinanced and that more can be done You would therefore agree with me that if the Harper government had prioritized those investments, as is being done by the current government, then more Canadians, and in particular Quebecers, would currently have access to high-speed internet.
Mr. Pelledo, before we go to you, I need that mic a bit higher. It's like a mustache. What happens is it pops and it hurts the interpreter's ears. I think you got it. You got it at a good spot right now? That's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Pelledo.
Right.
Well, sir, we can only salute the recent initiatives that have been announced by the Quebec government in collaboration with the government of Canada that will result in a substantial investment, which will benefit certainly in the areas that we serve here in Quebec for internet access, high-speed internet access. And in the past, the strength of our networks was undeniable. And heaven knows that in essence, the recent pandemic has given us an opportunity. Of course, we would have liked to prove that otherwise, but the circumstances are what we have seen. And without doubt, we were in a position to demonstrate that the policies of the government of today and the previous ones have resulted in a situation where Canada can benefit from the most solid networks, and once again, with the capacity for people to communicate and get entertainment and so forth quite solidly. And tell me, to what extent are broadband technology investments something that make it possible to allow for subscription to a high-speed internet service to make it more affordable both for individuals and for companies in Quebec? I had an opportunity to mention this. To me, the reason is quite a simple one. It's very simple, in fact. We need to make sure that the conditions exist so that competition can prevail. And there are a certain number of constraints that result in a situation where, well, those measures are essential because of the previously existing monopoly. I talked about the telephone poles and the decision by the CRTC, and it will also be a task which the political decision makers and regulatory authorities will have to ensure for the benefit of Canadians to be able to achieve the objectives which the government or governments, the federal government and the government of Quebec, as far as we're concerned, will be able to, in fact, fulfill those objectives that have been set by the policies which you announced.
Thank you, Mr. Iacono. We're now going to move on to the block. Mr. Braceau-Deval, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Pelledo. I have the impression that the famous telephone pole quarrels concerning access, we've been talking about this for 5, 10 years, 20 years. I don't know how long that's been going on. I can't remember that far back, based on my still relatively young age, that we were not talking about problems in the newspaper of telephone pole access. And I know that that was a problem that had to do with what Bell was doing to prevent competition with access to the poles. And it was announced by Rogers, by Cogeco, by the FCM, the Canadian Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Quebec Federation of Municipalities. But what would explain the fact, on the one hand, that it lasted as long as it did as a situation, and furthermore, perhaps, can we say that the accumulated pressure from Hydro-Quebec and the recent decision of the CRTC, can we assume that this will be enough to solve the problem of telephone pole access? Well, thank you, sir, for the question. Yes, we do hope, in fact, of course, you have to understand that Bell Canada is a competitor of Videotron, and the telephone pole network in Quebec is particularly occupied by Hydro-Quebec and Bell Canada, certainly within the territories that we cover, from Gatineau through to the Lower St. Lawrence. And then apart from that, it's TELUS, which used to be called Quebec Telephone. And so we have always noted that there's no problem. The Hydro-Quebec pole network is also quite substantial, and we always had some facility to optimize our relations with Hydro-Quebec for a reason that's quite simple, probably because we don't compete against Hydro-Quebec. We don't sell electricity, which is not the case with Bell Canada, in our opinion. These are some of the reasons why we met with them in order to try to create. There were all kinds of obstacles that prevented us from building out our network and to be able to provide a competitive, innovative service to citizens who were not able to benefit from that competition. They were being served by a telecommunications service from Bell Canada, but is a service that had not been the subject of any improvement or modernization. And when we wanted to be able to provide that, then there was obstacles preventing us from getting access to the infrastructure. And this is a fairly unusual thing, and you've probably followed the episode where the Premier of Quebec called upon the Bell president at the Blue Room in the National Assembly to say that they were going to take the necessary action to make sure that Quebecers could have access to the largest possible amount where they could have high-speed access. And in good French, as they say, it was like a wake-up call. And in other words, Bell understood that they had to halt those practices, and in the meantime, the CRTC, they have the tools necessary to do this, which was not necessarily the case of the Quebec government. And now, with the dialogue table that was set up and the CRTC, which has become really a watchdog, because they have also threatened to impose financial penalties on Bell if, as far as I'm concerned, this is what should be done, although sometimes a $10 million fine to Bell Canada. I'm sorry to say this, but it's like a drop of water in the ocean. It doesn't amount to much for a company like them that makes $10 billion in operating profits per year, or $10 million sometimes. To delay the competition would really be a very small sum for them to pay. So perhaps higher penalties would have to be imposed. And in particular, one mustn't lose sight of the fact that Bell Canada is also a major service provider to the federal government and to Canada and to the Quebec state. Thank you. I would like to ensure that there are these packages. I had no choice for my cell phone. I had to take Bell because in Parliament, but it's been years now that the remote regions and also less remote regions have been demanding better high-speed internet access. For example, in my riding, if I just take Marguerite-Duville, 628 households are less than 20 minutes from Montreal who still do not have access to high-speed internet. Do you think that there are any concrete steps that could be taken by the federal government to solve this problem? And with the announcements that have just come out not very long ago for the Quebec-Canada agreement, do you think that this time it's going to be the right one, that there will no longer be a problem of internet access? Is that the case, or is it going to be once again that it's all talk but it won't amount to anything? Well, once again, honourable member, we hope it will work out. And my feeling is that it's just my feeling, but in view of the experience that we have with the previous experiences, I would hope that this time it's the right one. And perhaps in defense of the Bell management, I must say that anything that was, I'm sorry to use the expression, but the whole inventory or backlog of facilities and installations with their telephone poles seems to have miraculously found a solution. So this leads me to conclude, although, as the famous formula says, caveat emptor, buyer beware. The situation seems to have improved, but that we will have to remain highly vigilant to keep track of what happens, because once again, we're talking about the public interest, and today we know very well that high-speed connectivity has become essential and necessary, and that's the reason why we want to make the necessary efforts and also deploy the capital required to ensure a strong and optimized network and the provision of the services that goes along with that.
Mr. Barros Luderbell, we're now going to move on to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing today and answering our questions on some very important topics. My interest predominantly is in the provision of rural broadband. The region I represent in Northwest BC is a vast rural region. Many of the communities are extremely small and spread out and struggle with connectivity. And so I'd like to start with some questions for our delegation from Telesat. Ms. Beck, your company was a focus of some attention in Northwest BC last year, starting in August, because a number of residents of the small rural community of Talel on Haida Gwaii got a notice from their internet service provider saying that their satellite internet service was going to be ending in December. And these residents had no alternatives. They had no ADSL, they had no fiber. They relied exclusively on satellite internet. And so fortunately, after a lot of advocacy, there was an agreement struck to extend the use of your geostationary satellite with ExploreNet, the internet service provider. I wonder if you could describe for us that agreement and provide some assurance that your satellite, which we were led to believe is nearing the end of its useful life, some assurance that that satellite and that agreement is going to get the residents of Talel through until they have a more dependable option for rural internet provision.
Ms. Beck?
Yes, thank you. The satellite that is utilized today to provide the service into the remote areas of Canada, which ExploreNet utilizes, still has many years of life remaining, and it is certainly able to provide service going out well past 2025. The LEO constellation Lightspeed service will have launched, will be able to provide connectivity services to many of these remote communities before the end of life of the actual official end of life of that satellite. And there is a great option alternative that will be able to deliver the 50 by 10 target service to all of these areas. And we will be actively working with local ISPs, with communities to ensure that the infrastructure is deployed in time and is available and ready at launch of the Lightspeed service, and we'll be able to transition off of the existing satellite services and onto true broadband low latency service using our Telesat Lightspeed constellation.
Mr. Bachrach?
Thank you, Ms. Beck. So if I understand you correctly, the agreement that you have currently with ExploreNet is going to be long enough in duration to bridge those rural residents through to the introduction of your Lightspeed program and give them an alternative option?
Ms. Beck?
So the satellite is certainly quite capable of bridging that. I would say that the agreement that we currently have with ExploreNet doesn't go out that far, and it'll be up to ExploreNet to continue on with offering those services in the interim.
Mr. Bachrach?
Okay, thanks for that answer. Turning perhaps to your Lightspeed project, which you've described for us, the low Earth orbiting satellites. The recent government announcement, $600 million from the federal government to improve coverage in Canada's remote regions. What is your company planning to do with this funding to improve connectivity?
Ms. Beck?
So the partnership that we have with the federal government doesn't provide for funding. It really is a commitment for capacity, and the objective is to deploy that capacity in some of the most remote and rural areas of Canada to effectively provide a cost-effective backhaul connectivity. And we will be working with local ISPs who will be then delivering internet, that last mile connectivity, to connect homes, schools, hospitals, small businesses in these underserved communities today.
Backrack?
Okay, so essentially, if I understand you correctly, the federal government is purchasing capacity on your network and will then provide that to local ISPs so that rural people can achieve greater connectivity?
Ms. Beck?
So essentially, yes, so it's a commitment essentially for capacity and we are currently working with a number of ISPs to bring that connectivity to these communities, to these underserved communities.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Thank you, Mr. Backrack. We're now going to move on to our second round of questions. And we're going to start off with the Conservatives. Ms. Cusi, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci au témoins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today.
Field. Mr. Field, I'm actually really taken aback with some of the comments of our new government representative. Welcome. Very nice to have a new member here on the committee. But I would like to point out that the Canada Infrastructure Bank, which we have had numerous meetings regarding, and of course we have had the minister here previously, and we look forward to welcoming her again this week. They have yet to fund a single broadband project in total. They have yet to fund an entire project. And in fact, the Auditor General, who we had here last week, who unfortunately informed us as to the dismal performance of this government on rail safety, also indicated that this government is not even tracking their own programs as to their targets. So they can't even know if their targets and if they are achieving them, if they are not tracking them effectively. So I'm going to start, Mr. Field, by asking, why is it, do you think, that there are so many funding envelopes? Because I know it's difficult for me to keep track of the different funding sources in an effort to achieve these rural projects you've talked about. How does having so many envelopes prevent from getting the job done?
Mr. Field.
Thank you. So I think the problem with having these multiple envelopes, again, all searching to solve the same problem in the same geography, is that you get overlap of responsibility, and you also, by the very nature of having these multiple programs, there isn't a single entity that is responsible for solving the entire problem. I think what we saw happen in Quebec a couple of weeks ago is encouraging. The federal government has provided funding directly to the government of Quebec in an attempt to, I believe their target is 98%, to get 98% of the population served. Don't quote me on that number. But I think it's programs like that that make a whole lot of sense to me. Again, having multiple entities all trying to solve a little bit of the problem in the same jurisdiction is extremely inefficient. It's not effective in solving the whole problem, and it leads to a lot of overlap and duplication of effort.
Ms. Cusi?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll continue then with the theme that you started on in your opening remarks, Mr. Field, and that was the collaboration between all three levels of government. And actually, I was just on television in Alberta today regarding the new daycare, announcement within the budget, how I'm not certain that's going to succeed, because what I've seen in terms of transport projects is the provinces blaming the federal government and the federal government blaming the provinces. So what do you think needs to happen in terms of collaboration at all three levels for success?
Mr. Field.
Yeah, I think it makes a whole lot of sense for the federal government to fund via a transfer payment the provinces and the territories. And much like other infrastructure projects, let the provinces figure out how to implement those solutions. Working with the municipalities, of course, I think regional and local input to those programs and projects is important. But I'm convinced that the further you get away from the municipality and the governmental hierarchy, you lose the plot a little bit. You don't have the local knowledge. You don't have the local flavor. So in an ideal world, I'd like to see all of the funds that are out there transferred to the provinces and the territories, and have the responsibility sit with the provinces and territories as to how to implement and how to resolve the problem.
Scusi?
Thank you, Chair. And I don't think we've seen more examples of this than during the pandemic in terms of healthcare transfers, in terms of long-term care facilities. So I think that your recommendation is very well taken. Can you give an example where we've seen this positive type of collaboration before? We've talked about how it should be. You've talked about how you think it should be done. Is there any jurisdiction that comes to mind where you've seen this done successfully?
Mr. Field.
Yeah, certainly. The SWIFT program is an example of that, right? The SWIFT is funded through transfer payment through Infrastructure Canada to the province of Ontario, and they have signed a contribution agreement with SWIFT, and we work directly with the province of Ontario to implement this program. So I think it works very well. It's very effective, and it eliminates that duplication.
Ms. Scusi?
Thank you, Chair. Do you think it's feasible for these groups to be able to coordinate that? You know, we have been waiting on the delivery of this high-speed internet for rural Canadians for a very long time. Do you think it's possible? You think they would have all levels of government, the federal government in particular, would have figured out how to achieve this? Do you think it's possible to achieve this?
Mr. Field?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's possible. I think through the, as I mentioned in my remarks, the provincial government has put a substantial amount of money into this in Ontario, most recently with an additional $2.8 billion on top of the $1 billion that was already there. The federal government has just added another $1 billion to their universal broadband fund. So I think the political will is there. I think the finances are finally starting to materialize. Like most things, the devil is in the details, and it will be really interesting to see how these programs are implemented and administrated.
Thank you, Mr. Field, and thank you, Ms. Cusi. We're now going to move on to...
Monsieur Président. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much to the witnesses. Thank you.
Mr. Alkiri, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to our guests. My first question is perhaps in 2 or 3 parts and addressed to Mr. Field. We have heard the need for a more coordinated approach, but we also hear that there is no one universal solution with the unique geography of Canada. If we look at the number of projects and investments, I understand where those comments come from. $3 billion through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, $1.75 billion from the Universal Broadband Fund, $600 million to be delivered through land-based satellite, $585 million through Connecto Innovar, $750 million over 5 years, thanks to the broadband fund of the CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission. So broadband is eligible for rural and northern areas for investment in Canada, $355 million up to now, and from the infrastructure fund of the First Nations, $50 million so far. So there are a lot of programs. So what can you say about that? A. B, I think I understand that Science and Economic Development Canada has coordinated these activities with federal partners as well as provincial and municipal partners to ensure that the financing is being paid effectively and in order to avoid overdevelopment. So there are many programs and investments that target a broad range of solutions in order to make sure that no Canadian is left out. the fact of having a number of different programs, does that give you more opportunities to apply for financing for those projects? Thank you.
Mr. Curry, who are you directing that question to?
I said in the beginning to Mr. Field.
Oh, Mr. Field. Thank you, Mr. Curry. Mr. Field.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think, as you've mentioned, there are a number of programs out there. And again, many of the programs that you've mentioned are being administered by different organizations. Many of them through ISED. I do concur with you on that. Again, in addition to those programs, there are provincial programs, there are municipally led programs. Again, all almost competing with each other. I use the word competing in a positive way, but they are competing with each other in many aspects to solve the same problem. I think by coordinating those efforts, by collecting the funding at the provincial and regional level, I think there is a better opportunity to solve this issue in a more coordinated way.
I go, Mr. President. I don't hear you on in mute. No problem.
Go ahead, Mr. O'Cleary.
Okay.
My second question is for Mr. Pelado and Mr. Pruneau. Can you explain why the government's decision to no longer use the hexagonal model was perceived as such a positive step in evaluating communities and households that are truly underserved? Thank you.
Mr. Pelado.
I want to inform the honourable member. Well, the hexagonal model, you're going to have to explain what you mean by that. I'm not quite sure I catch the reference. The hexagonal model means in several stages. I can discuss it with my colleague, but unfortunately, we don't have an answer to what's a highly technical question. Perhaps I can get back to you on that. Is there someone else among our witnesses who can answer that question?
No. Okay.
Okay, then another question. Mr. Pelado, the recent announcement of financing between the federal government and the provincial government in Quebec makes financing, it's almost historic financing for high-speed internet connectivity. How do you evaluate the impact of that on the Quebec population in their day-to-day lives, in their businesses, their schools, and in their communication? How can you assess that with a community that was not able to get access to that service for a long time? Well, the first thing we can say, honourable member, is that the Quebecers over the past 20 years have been benefiting from that, I would say, since the 2000s, when we had what we called telephone internet, which developed on the cable network, and then it left the copper wires to move into, first of all, coaxial and then fiber optics. So all of this was part of, I would say, very closely involved in the development of the productivity of our industries and also in innovation, and made it possible to download content and entertainment and many other services that are now available. So all of this has been made possible owing to the major investments that telecommunications firms, and particularly Videotron, as well as I think I can speak on behalf of our colleagues such as Cogeco, because they're in different areas, they have made it possible for Quebecers to benefit from an environment that previously was in fact essentially occupied by the historic monopoly of Bell. So this was a very positive thing. And the second thing that we also have to note is that all of this created an environment that resulted in development of innovation and customer service. And this is very important too. Of course, Quebecers want to be able to benefit from an affordable telecommunications network, and because competition can make this possible to achieve, but also innovation. So there are additional services which have been provided, and as far as Quebec is concerned, more particularly, owing to the richness of Quebec culture, it made it possible for us to also create services such as Club Illico, where talent, the culture, television, radio have been able to achieve the equivalent of a service similar to Netflix that we are familiar with in Illico. So I was just to conclude by saying that this has benefited Quebecers and will continue to do so because competition is always better and beneficial to Quebecers and Canadians.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pellado, and thank you, Mr. Alcuri. I'm now going to move on to Mr. Barcelou-Duval for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We often hear it said that telecommunication services are very expensive here, and often they say that it's because we have a wide territory, a very spread out territory. But in a document from the Competition Bureau submitted to the CRTC, it was demonstrated that actually the three telecommunications giants, Bell, TELUS, and Rogers, have very high levels of profitability, even higher than what we see elsewhere in the world. So I would like to know, actually, nevertheless, when we look at, for example, if we compare Quebec to the rest of Canada, we can see that in Quebec, internet fees are lower than what we see in the rest of Canada. Can you explain, Mr. Pellado, what is behind that? Well, perhaps I could divide the question of profitability and in relation to also the investments. So we have to look at a number of lines in profitability. The first one is the operating profit, the ability to generate cash, as they say, but also in a large part of the benefits of the profits generated by businesses are reinvested. And in view of the vast territory that we live in, it's important to observe that it will require more investment. And that is the reason why, in fact, serving regions and rural areas was significantly delayed, whereas in denser areas, the population density in urban areas, well, those investments were able to be done much more quickly. And that is where it brings into play what was announced previously. On the one hand, the Quebec government, in collaboration with the federal government, in the willingness and perhaps also the necessity from a socioeconomic viewpoint to serve all citizens, they made a commitment to have a program to assist businesses in telecommunications in order to provide high-speed internet access service. So these two things taken together result in the fact that we require higher amounts of investment in view of the vast territory, but also you always have to be up to the level of the most recent technologies. And this is something we saw in the pandemic. Our strong networks made it possible because this is a good example once again today. We're doing telework, and of course, heaven knows this telework has significantly loaded up the networks, which have not given way in a period where it was shown that the strength of those networks was needed, and this is the reason why those investments that were made previously were justified on account of the current status of the network.
Barcelou-Duval, we're now going to move on to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Field. I found what you said, Mr. Field, about the fact that there is no single entity responsible for solving the problem very interesting, and the assertion that this creates inefficiencies and delays and such. One of the questions I've been trying to get an answer to from the government is which minister is in charge of delivering on the promises around rural broadband. The infrastructure minister, the industry minister, the rural economic development minister. It seems that there's a lot of overlap between those departments, and yet not a clear answer on who's in charge of delivering on the promises. Do you have a sense of that, and do you feel that perhaps the overlap and the number of cooks in the kitchen is a liability when it comes to actual accountability for these promises that we're hearing?
Mr. Field?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm probably not going to comment too much on the political setup. But what I will say and reiterate is that there are many, both at the federal and the provincial level, there are many organizations, many groups that are all trying to tackle the problem of rural broadband. And I think that leads to inefficiencies and overlaps in trying to solve the problem.
Mr. Bachrach?
A really quick follow-up. Another thing you mentioned was the presence of these grassroots ISPs in rural areas, that you have groups that come together to solve a problem. They're not doing it to make a lot of money. They're doing it because their community needs the service really badly. And when we see these large envelopes of money become available for rural broadband delivery, we get much larger players interested in that same landscape. I'm wondering what happens to those small ISPs. How do we preserve their place in the mix? Because in many ways they provide excellent service for their neighbors. Where do they fit in the current landscape?
Mr. Field?
Yeah, thank you. So in the SWIFT program, what we found was that about 20% of our funding went to the large national carriers. About 25% went to kind of medium-sized regional players, and about 55% went to those local carriers that we were talking about. Not only did the local carriers participate to a very high level, but they also stepped up with some very competitive applications to the program. So I think it's imperative that any program that's looking to solve this problem, in the policy, in the evaluation criteria that they create, they have to allow for the participation of the small local carriers, right? These are the companies that spend money. They live in our communities. They spend money in our communities. They're important to the communities, and they certainly stepped up in the SWIFT program to help us be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We're now going to go back to the Conservatives. We have Mr. Shipley. Mr. Shipley, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the witnesses. And I do apologize. Interesting night that I lost some connectivity, but I did at the beginning of the meeting, especially when Mr. Scheer was speaking. So if I'm repeating any questions, I do apologize, but I lost that for a while. Most of mine are going to be directed towards Mr. Field, who's we're familiar with each other. SWIFT covers my riding, so I have some specific questions. Mr. Field, very succinctly, when and who first formed SWIFT? How was it formed?
Mr. Field?
Yeah, so SWIFT was incorporated in 2016, and it was incorporated by the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus.
Mr. Shipley?
Thank you. So it's mainly been a municipal led initiative?
Correct.
Thank you. Recently, we've had some announcements. We've had some success. When I say we've all partnered up here. You and I have spoken in the past in regards to it's always been a problem, especially lately with Barrie Springwater Oromonte and getting houses hooked up during the pandemic. We've had some great success lately. We've had some good announcements up here. A lot of homes are getting hooked up through your program. What has driven your success for this area of getting some homes that we've recently been able to announce hooked up for broadband?
Yep.
So I think it's a number of things. First and foremost, the support we've gotten from the federal, the provincial, and the municipal governments, financial support to make the program happen. But equally important, the ISPs have really stepped up to participate in the program. I mentioned earlier, I threw some numbers around. The ISPs put in roughly half of the money to the SWIFT program, right? So they certainly have a stake in the game, and they've put their best foot forward to be as competitive as possible in the process.
Thank you. And Mr. Field, as you well know, because we spoke since, with some of those good announcements, though, came some people who were definitely disappointed because they just missed out. Perhaps you could educate me on what are some of the hurdles or the main hurdle that is causing some homes to still not be included in getting into these announcements and getting hooked up.
Mr. Field?
Yeah, the bottom line is funding, right? So the SWIFT program, our target was to solve 23% of the population, the underserved population in southwestern Ontario. That still leaves, if my math is correct, 77% of the population being unserved. So with future funding, with future programs, hopefully we will narrow that gap. SWIFT currently has a proposal in front of the federal and provincial governments called the SWIFT 2.0 Giga Project. And the intention of that is to actually get to 95% of the population in southwestern Ontario via fiber, leaving the remaining 5% to wireless and low Earth orbit technologies.
Mr. Shipley?
Well, that would be great news. Specifically, Mr. Field, as you know, because we've spoke, some certain areas get of a subdivision, whether it be in Minnesingit and Mills, Midhurst. I'm sure you're familiar with these names because you're doing some projects in them soon. Some get prioritized. How do you prioritize for which houses, which streets in a certain area get done? What criteria do these communities have to meet to get hooked up?
Mr. Field?
Yeah, so within the SWIFT program, we don't prioritize any given communities. We do run an open and competitive procurement process, and effectively the ISPs bid on the areas that make sense to them with the subsidy to build in. So we don't give priority over one community over another. We are very intentional in that, right? We let the market drive us to where the solution will be, noting that we don't have enough money to solve 100% of the problem. If we had the money to solve it all, it would be a very, very different targeted approach.
Again, Mr. Field, maybe, and you and I have talked in the past. It's not the most cut and dry industry. It is a little confusing for a layman. So could you just, or a layperson, could you just explain to me again, specific, because I get asked this question all the time. If, a certain house or a certain street's getting done, 50 yards down the road, that street's not getting done. You say it's a monetary issue.
Yeah,
where does that come in?
Yeah, so the reality is that a network has to start somewhere and it has to end somewhere. And unless and until you have enough funding to solve 100% of a given geography, you're going to have areas that get served and areas that don't get served. And given the linear nature of the infrastructure, it really does result in a lot of cases to what you're explaining, where you'll have the network stop at a certain point. So house A will get service, and 50, 100, 250 meters down the road, the next house does not get service.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Field. And I'm going to allow one quick question, Mr. Shipley. You got about 15 seconds left. Go ahead.
I was just going to sum up by saying it's very unfortunate. Anything we can do to work towards getting those few houses that are left out added in, we'd be there to help you out any way we can. If it comes down to a form of money, only so much we can do with that. Maybe we can ask our good friends in government to help us out there a bit more. Thank you, Mr. Field.
Thank you, Mr. Field, and thank you, Mr. Shipley. We're now going to move on to the Liberals. Ms. Jasek, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to all the witnesses for your testimony today. I would actually like to ask Mr. Field a few questions. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for explaining exactly how SWIFT came about. We had some complimentary words for SWIFT from the regional Niagara representatives that were here at our last meeting. And you've talked a lot about consolidating programs. One of the programs, though, that seems to me has been extremely useful, one of the federal programs, is the Rapid Response Stream. In my riding of Markham-Stouffville, I have a number of small hamlets, much like Mr. Shipley in Simcoe County, and the region of York is basically the coordinating agency for all the various applicants, the various ratepayers groups and so on that come forward looking for improved broadband. So in terms of the rapid response stream that was announced last November, two of my very, very small hamlets actually have received some assistance from the federal government through that particular stream. What is your experience in southwestern Ontario through
Mr. Field?
SWIFT?
Thank you. So it's my understanding that there have been a number of, I believe it's 3 projects now that have been awarded in southwestern Ontario under the rapid response program. And I think, just to clarify, I think the existence of all of these various programs isn't necessarily a bad thing. What it tells me is that there are multiple levels of government that are taking this seriously and are trying to resolve the issue. Again, I go back to the analogy of each program is taking a piece of the pizza, but nobody's eating the whole pizza, right? And I think that's what we have to get to, is solutions where we're resolving the entire problem rather than taking little bites out of it here and there. And SWIFT is in that category as well, right? We were tasked with resolving 23% of the problem. It still leaves a lot of the problem unresolved.
Going back to your issue of you would prefer to see simply the federal government transfer a block of money to the provinces and territories, and for them to then disperse as they saw fit, obviously with some consultation regionally and so on. Having been a member of the Ontario legislature for over 10 years, I have some sympathy for that position. But now being obviously at the federal level, I would say that the federal government does have a responsibility to the taxpayer to make sure that the distribution of these funds is done on some logical criteria. So, in your view, what would be those criteria that should be used in order to disperse funds in the way that you suggest?
So I think I'm sorry. So I think you could eliminate kind of the population argument, right? X% of the population gets X% of the money. I think ultimately you have to look at the need and the unique nature of the territory, the geography you're trying to serve, right? Going back to my earlier argument that bringing this down to the regional level, having local input is very, very important to resolving this issue. Resolving the issue in southwestern Ontario is very, very different than it's going to be in resolving it in the Northwest Territories. There are different challenges, different geographies, different settlement patterns, all sorts of things that make each one of those areas unique. And I think by bringing it down to the provincial and regional levels, those levels are better able to understand and to adapt to those requirements.
It's an interesting concept. It seems to me that the way things are working now is, well, certainly from the perspective of my own community, it's working quite well. If I have some time left, Ms. Beck, could you just give us some idea of the affordability of the services that you're trying to provide through Lightspeed? Can you compare them to how the cost compares to those of us who use conventional fiber?
Ms. Beck?
Yes. So the Telesat Lightspeed service doesn't compete with fiber. We're not here to compete directly where it is affordable and economic to deploy fiber. We target regions where the business case is strained to really bring fiber to these very rural and remote areas of the country and equally around the world. And so you actually have to compare the cost of deploying fiber to these most kind of rural, far from existing fiber today. And that's where the LEO Lightspeed service and the backhaul connectivity, that's where it becomes more economic to use the Lightspeed service to connect all of these remote communities. So sometimes it's distance, sometimes it's the geography, it's what makes up the the challenging nature of deploying fiber or even microwave connectivity to reach these communities. We do target the areas that are the hardest to serve and the hardest to reach, but we can do that on a more economical basis than you could by deploying a terrestrial network solution.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Thank you, Ms. Jacek. We're now going to move on to our third round of questions. We're going to start off with the Conservatives. Mrs. Soroka, you have the floor for 5 minutes. I think we lost Mr. Soroka. Oh, there he is. Did I catch you off guard there, Gerald?
Sorry, my problem. I was talking with my staff at the time.
No problem. Go ahead.
Pardon me for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question goes to Mr. Field. Mr. Field, your organization's regional broadband project indicates you're receiving $63.7 million, approximately 30% of the total project cost from the federal government. What caught my eye was that the funding came from the New Building Canada Fund. I am curious, since you say you need more money, have you tried and applied for other programs through the Universal Broadband Fund or through the Canada Infrastructure Bank?
Mr. Field?
Yeah, thank you for that. So as it's currently developed, the Universal Broadband Fund, SWIFT, as a municipal organization, cannot apply directly to that for funding through that. The same goes for the Canada Infrastructure Bank. As a municipally led organization, we're not in a position to apply for funding under the CIB rules.
Mr. Soroka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know, like you had talked about the different consolidating the funding options, and I know in my riding I had an issue where an Indigenous group has a program where they can come into and service other Indigenous communities, and they're plowing in fiber optic directly to the communities, which is great, but then they bypass so many along the way because that was never part of their program. So I'm seeing that the failures that I see from these different funding options. Through SWIFT, have you mitigated that, or is there still some loopholes that are happening in your organizations as well?
Mr. Field?
No, absolutely. We address that head on up front. Any contract we sign with an ISP, it's very clear in the contract that if they run fiber in front of a premises, they will serve that premises. Far too often we hear from residents in Southwestern Ontario telling me they can walk out, they can see some fiber hanging there, they could probably reach out and touch it. They just can't get access to it. So under the SWIFT program, we don't allow that. If a design passes somebody's home, they have to serve that home.
Mr. Soroka?
Okay, well, my next question, I don't know if it's to Mr. Pruneau or Mr. Palado. Last year, when the minister announced the results of the 600 megahertz auction, he noted that the government set-aside policy had created more competition for Canadians. But we are hearing that set-aside bidders have a poor track record of deploying spectrum in rural communities. What is your company's experience with this? And would you agree there should be a use it or lose it condition to ensure spectrum is deployed in rural Canada?
Was that for Mr. Palado, Mrs. Soroka?
It's his company, but I know Mr. Palado was answering as well. So Mr. Pernod could answer. I'm fine with that.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thanks for the question. Well, in fact, our experience in the province of Quebec is that we've used all of the spectrum that we've bought so far and set aside spectrum specifically. So, I'm not sure for the other operators, across Canada, if they've used the spectrum that they've bought and set aside a spectrum auction. But in our case, we did. And that's probably explains why the service that we provide to the Quebecers is a great service, very reliable, and we cover approximately 90% of the population now with our network in the province of Quebec. So we can say that we've used the set aside spectrum that we bought.
Mr. Soroka?
Yes, Mr. Pernod, that's why I'm saying I'm glad you used it. But would you say that the companies that buy the spectrum but do not use it, and now it's potentially out there that you or your company could be using, do you think there should be a use it or lose it condition when these companies buy the spectrum?
Mr. Pernod?
Well, thanks for the question. Obviously, I understand that the reason for putting some spectrum available to operators is for using it, obviously. And there are some conditions in the spectrum licenses, conditions that request us to develop and our network with the spectrum that we bought. So I think that it's probably already provided for in the spectrum licenses conditions right now.
Okay. Ms. Beck, do you think the programs are actually addressing the needs of Canadians to access the internet? And so what funding options have you applied for?
Ms. Beck.
So we have traditionally not applied for any funding programs as part of broadband deployments. We have actively worked with local, regional ISPs, Indigenous and community-led ISPs. They have been the applicant for funding, and they have come to Telesat to secure the backhaul satellite connectivity to connect their communities.
Well, thank you, Ms. Beck, and thank you, Mrs. Soroka. We're now going to move on to our next speaker for Liberals. We have Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all of our witnesses this evening. Question for Mr. Field, first of all. Mr. Field, you noted that the municipal contributions and involvement in many of the programs that you are involved with. And of course, you identified the challenge of a coordinated approach and how that poses its own challenges. So in the launch of the Universal Broadband Fund, our government included a new service called the Pathfinder service to assess applicants with the small applicants, especially with the application process. And from my understanding, this was really well received as small municipalities face challenges with capacity, and especially during the pandemic period. So do you have any experience with this service? And if so, did you find it helpful? And is this something that should be considered in other federal funding programs, particularly as it applies to smaller and more rural and remote communities?
Thank you for that. Yes, in fact, I was able to use the Pathfinder service in an application that I assisted on in Pelee Island, a small island in Lake Erie here in Southern Ontario. A very small community, about 350 residents. They didn't really have the resources to fill out some of these rather complicated applications. So that I think is exactly what the Pathfinder service was there for. Is kind of I think they call it a concierge service to help the ISPs and the applicants through the process. We did use it in the application, in the UBF application I assisted Pelee Island with, and it worked very, very well.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Perhaps Mr. Pelado, on this one regards to the CRTC, can you discuss how the recent ruling from the CRTC on wholesale rates will help address the connectivity gaps in rural and underserviced communities?
Mr. Pelado.
Are you referring to the last week decision, I guess?
Mr. Rogers.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I will piggyback a little bit also on my colleague regarding the question of your colleague, Mr. Soroka. I think it's very important, and we our experience, for the last 12 years now, since the government decided that they will set aside spectrum to make sure that there will be competition. In certain areas of the country, this goal or this objective have been met. Should we say that it was met everywhere? I guess that the answer is no. And the answer is no because at a certain point, I guess that the participant at the auction I refer specifically, to what we call the AWS auction that took place in 2008, was open for companies that were probably not, the ones that will build networks. At the end, after 10 years, it ended up in the hands of Shaw, and they've been able to build on Free Mobile and Shaw Mobile. We know what's actually is taking place, so I guess that this is why I said, when I spoke earlier, that we're getting back to square one regarding how competition will take place in certain areas of Canada. This is for sure that Quebec is a very competitive landscape, and they've been able to Quebec have been able to provide to people here, much lower prices in terms of cell phone, because there's this fourth competitor or their fourth player in the marketplace. So is the MVNO model will be able, to provide this? I guess that, with the rules that we have right now, and it's tough for me to answer completely because the rules of the auction forbid, comments on this. But I guess, what we're seeing, it's a balance between, you know, organization and companies that are able to piggyback on the actual network to make sure that they will build and they will be able to provide what we call a facility-based network, which will include significant investment. And it's not going to be here to flip those assets, to a new owner for the purpose of making money or for the purpose of making a transaction. It's here to stay, and it's stay for the for the ability of Canadians to enjoy competition with a fourth operator.
Thank you, Mr. Pellado, and thank you, Mr. Rogers. We're now going to move on to the block. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one subject that hasn't been touched on much yet in the committee since the start of the meeting, but Mr. Pellado, you talked about that in your opening speech regarding the transaction of purchase of Shaw by Rogers and the impact that this could have and the consequences for competition. I'd like to know if you can develop further on that aspect. Yes, I'd be glad to. I think that what has been demonstrated is that, beyond all doubt, the fourth operator, according to the conditions created by the government, ultimately over the years in around 2007, 2008, made it possible for Canadians, and particularly Quebecers, and also residents in the maritime provinces, with the installation of a fourth player with the Bragg family and the Eastlink company, to create favorable conditions to have competition and result in lower prices. It's quite legitimate for the government to want to set up the necessary measures so that Canadians may benefit from competitive considerations that will result in better prices and also a factor of innovation. Of course, pricing is important for an operator and for a citizen dealing with telecommunications operators, but it's also not the only factor. Prices is also an aspect of innovation, and increasingly we observe that a company such as TRAN was able to provide solutions that did not previously exist and which are now available to Quebecers. On the one hand, this was a service of high quality, and furthermore, also there are packages that enabled strong service with accelerated speed. So now we're in an environment of 5G, and it's because of a competitive environment that there will also be a more rapid deployment of 5G, which will enable Quebecers and Canadians elsewhere. And of course, this is a question of, I'll come back to that in a few moments, but it will enable the deployment of new technologies. And this is what we were able to observe in the previous years leading up to now regarding the installation of new technologies here in Quebec. And now, the transaction between Shaw and Rogers which was mentioned a bit earlier in my previous remarks, well, there was a kind of a blockage in the competitive environment because the different players that entered the market weren't really there for the purpose of being a long-term telecommunications operator. They were financed by foreign stakeholders, or what we call private equity, that don't have the purpose of creating the necessary and long-lasting conditions for competition. Fortunately, Shaw was the acquirer of Free Mobile, which itself, well, was preceded by Wind, and which created the necessary conditions for competition. Unfortunately, with the transaction that has been announced, we end up back at square one, where the fourth competitor or the fourth player was the one that was able to inject some competition, is now disappearing according to the transaction that was announced if it's carried through. And that is the reason why we hope that the transaction will be, well, authorized by the different authorities such as the Competition Bureau, or whether it's the CRTC or the Department of Industry, only if the provisions are made so that there's a provision of the wireless part of the company so that it can be ensured that a fourth player will also be available in the long term in order to uphold the competitive conditions for the innovation, for the competitive factor, the price factor, and customer satisfaction factor, particularly with regard to a service that is in keeping with their expectations.
And thank you, Mr. Brasso-Duval. We're now going to move over to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And another question for Ms. Beck regarding the Lightspeed program. Now, there's been a lot of media attention on Starlink, Elon Musk's low Earth orbiting satellite provider. And I'm wondering if you could speak to how Lightspeed differs and provides a unique product offering from that program.
Ms. Beck.
Yes, thank you. So Lightspeed differs. We are essentially a B2B company. We provide backhaul connectivity, working with carriers, ISPs, other integrators. On the other hand, the Starlink service is a direct-to-user consumer offer, and so their model puts the small dishes either on people's homes or beside the home, and they serve those homes directly. Telesat looks at basically a holistic view of providing connectivity to the community, and so we provide a big, fat, capable broadband trunk into the community that serves the community at large. And so we can connect, the 5G towers so that they also have access to, LTE or 5G services. We provide sufficient connectivity, and we can trunk gigabits worth of connectivity. And so there's sufficient connectivity to connect enterprises that need as well those gigabit per second speeds, local or municipal governments, businesses, schools, as well as the households. And so we can serve 50 by 10 services and target each of those homes. But if services want higher tiers and the ISP is prepared to offer higher tiered services, we can also support that. We can scale with the demand of the community. And so those are the key differences. It's direct to user versus a B2B solution where we trunk that capacity and we work with the local service providers or regional service providers who will manage and maintain the service locally.
Thank you, Ms. Beck, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We're now going to move on to the Conservatives with Mr. Cram. Mr. Cram, you got the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to thank all the witnesses to the committee, welcome all the witnesses to the committee this evening. I'm particularly interested in hearing from the witnesses from Telesat, since I read the article about them in last week's Financial Post. So first of all, what is the timeline for Telesat's Lightspeed system of satellites to be in low Earth orbit and fully operational?
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we will be launching satellites at the beginning of 2023. We will be in service in the northern latitudes by end of 2023. And between that time, we'll be doing beta testing and working with our customers, and we'll have full global service kind of mid 2024.
And where will the satellites be built?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are working with local partners in Canada, and the satellites themselves will be assembled, integrated, and tested at a facility in Montreal. So, and I should say that the constellation as a whole will be operated from here in Ottawa. We have a facility. We're going to be building a facility in Quebec as well for the technical operations, and then we'll have kind of landing stations throughout the entire world.
Mr. Cram.
And where will the satellites be launched from?
So unfortunately, Canada doesn't have a launch capability, but we are working with various launch providers. We've already announced one partnership with Blue Origin to launch some of our satellites, and stay tuned for some upcoming announcements.
Okay, fair enough. And so I can certainly see the benefits to the consumers and the benefits to communities about having high-speed internet access, obviously. But I was wondering if the witnesses could speak to the direct high-tech jobs that Telesat would be creating. Like how many jobs are under your roof, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So Telesat is scaling quite dramatically with this Lightspeed program and investing significantly into that. So I should say last year we hired about 100 people. We're only about 350 in Canada today. This year we'll be hiring many more than that. The recent announcement we made with the government of Quebec will see the creation of 600 new jobs and the maintenance of another 650. And I should say that there's going to be more here at our headquarters here in Ottawa as well.
Okay.
All right. Now the article in the Financial Post was titled "Canada's Telesat takes on Musk Bezos in space race to provide fast broadband." So how would the witnesses rate Telesat's chances of getting a system of low Earth orbit satellites into space before Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos?
Sure. So I would say Telesat competes in one of the most competitive and dynamic global industries. And you see that with exactly that who we're competing with. One question we get a lot is how will you compete? And we've been doing this for over 50 years. And when we first started looking at a low Earth orbit satellite architecture, we really looked at what our customers need today and then built a system that will deliver that in the most affordable, technically advanced way possible. Telesat has a very long and kind of storied culture of innovation, and we're world leaders in engineering, and that comes through in the constellation Lightspeed. I would say that MIT has looked at multiple constellations in great depth and come out that our constellation is the most efficient and technically savvy, and that's a great kind of it points to the innovation pedigree that Telesat has. So we feel that we're coming to market with the best constellation. We know the markets and our customers very, very well. We provide services in Canada today, but we also provide services all over the world. So we feel good coming to market.
Mr. Cram.
And the same Financial Post article mentioned that SpaceX and Amazon were going to focus on the consumer market, while Telesat was going to focus on what it described as deep-pocketed business clients. Could the witnesses elaborate on who are these deep-pocketed business clients and why would they prefer to do business with Telesat over SpaceX or Amazon?
So what I would say is my colleague Michelle spoke about this in answering the question earlier about us compared to Starlink, but it really comes down to a direct-to-consumer model, which Starlink and Amazon are taking, and the model that Telesat uses. And it's what we've used for 50 years, where we partner with a local ISP, we bring capacity into the community, and then we provide kind of a holistic solution for the entire community, including things like LTE and 5G.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hampton, and thank you, Mr. Cram. We're now going to move on to our final speaker, final set of questions from the Liberals. We have Mr. Fillmore. Mr. Fillmore, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair. I appreciate that. And thanks to the witnesses for sharing your time and expertise this evening. I want to ask a question to our witnesses this evening that are in the business of providing terrestrial broadband. But before I get there, I just want to correct a little bit of the record here so that we have a good record of the conversation at this committee for this important study. One of the Conservative members brought up the Auditor General's report on rail safety and seemed to paint the report in a negative light as if it were some sort of a damning report. And I just needed to clarify that, in fact, the Auditor General's report said that overall, Transport Canada made progress in addressing recommendations from our 2013 audit in the areas we followed up on. It went on to say, we found that Transport Canada improved its risk-based planning for oversight. In particular, the department significantly increased the number of its planned risk-based inspections. We also found that Transport Canada made progress in conducting more audits of railway companies' safety management systems. So the problems that the Auditor General was reporting on ranged from 2013, included 2013 to 2015, the time of the Harper government. And so the actual conclusion, I think, from the Auditor General's report was that the current government was able to achieve what the previous government was not with regard to rail safety. So I thought that was important that we leave an accurate record of our discussion here tonight. We had another Conservative member of the committee who, in the context of the greatest investment in community and national infrastructure in this country's history, seems to find fault with the level of funding, while at the same time had actually run a national federal election campaign on a promise to reduce infrastructure funding. So the internal conflict is a little hard to square. And needless to say, I think we've heard from our witnesses tonight that the level of investment we're seeing in national infrastructure is appropriate and very well received. So having dispensed with those distractions, I want to bring it back to the reason that we're here tonight, which is connectivity. And if I could ask again the witnesses who are in the business of terrestrial broadband, the UBF is a national program, and our government is committed to working in every province and territory to support projects that ensure that every Canadian has the access to digital opportunities that they need and deserve in this era. And I think it's evident with recent announcements with the government of British Columbia and Rogers in addressing the connectivity gaps along the Highway of Tears, for example. And of course, with the recent agreement between the government of Quebec that committed $800 million to fund the acceleration of broadband projects to connect every Quebecer by the end of 2022. And going further, last Thursday, we announced almost $11 million in combined funding with the Tlichon government to bring high-speed internet to rural residents in the North Slave region. So where I'm going with this is, I wonder if any of the broadband witnesses could discuss whether, and if so, why it's so crucial that these investments in broadband be seen as shared responsibilities, the benefits of which are that must include partnerships of the private sector as well as the federal government, provinces, territories, and municipalities. So a question about the importance of that kind of collaboration and why that's important.
Who would like to jump into that one? I'll pick one. Mr. Field, go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, I think it's vitally important that all levels of government and the private sector participate here, right? Ultimately, in these subsidy programs, the money ends up in the hands of the ISPs themselves. So we want to make sure that the ISPs are contributing to that they're investing in their own networks. Again, I go back to my statements earlier that the reason that this problem exists is because of that market failure in these rural areas. So it's not profitable for an ISP to invest in an area with very, very low population density, and therefore the subsidy is required. So I think it's important for the federal government to invest in this, the provincial governments, and the municipal governments in the areas where these investments are being made. Now, of course, at the end of the day, this is all coming out of the same pocket. It's all coming out of the taxpayers' pocket. So I think it's incumbent on all levels of government to make sure that these programs are happening in the most efficient and effective ways possible.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore, and thank you, Mr. Field. Folks, we've come to the end of the meeting. First off, I do want to take this opportunity to thank all the witnesses. You spent 2 hours with us today, and we truly appreciate the time that you've taken out of your busy schedules to come and participate in the study, and therefore participate in the final report that we're hoping is going to reach the floor of the House of Commons sooner rather than later. To members, to you as well, thank you for your participation, your interventions today, and of course, once again, a very productive meeting with the Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities Committee. With that, before I do adjourn this meeting, members, I do want to remind you of the aircraft certification study that we're finalizing. I'd like to take a moment to remind you that we've distributed the report on the aircraft certification study to each member. And if members have any suggestions for edits, what I'm trying to do here, folks, is expedite the meeting that we would otherwise have when the analysts bring back the draft, and not spend a lot of time on discussing any changes that you'd want to make. I prefer to do that beforehand. So if any member has suggestions for edits based on what you have received, it would be extremely helpful if you could submit those to the clerk so that we can have them in writing in both official languages for when the committee begins consideration on that draft report. Along the topic reports, the analysts will soon be drafting the report on the study of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. It would be helpful for the analysts if members could submit their drafting instructions to the clerk upon receiving that draft report as well. So with that, I'll leave it there. Any members have any questions on that?
Just a quick question, Mr.
Sure,
Chair. On your last comment, you said submit drafting instructions upon receiving a copy of the draft report. I'm just wondering the timing on drafting instructions for the report, which I assume would come before the draft.
Mr. Clerk, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, actually, Mr. Backrack is quite correct. If we could receive any drafting instructions, just send them into the committee's general email, and then I'll forward them to the analysts, and that'll really give them a leg up, a real hand in drafting the report.
And Mr. Chair, perhaps through to the clerk, is there a timeline on that? Is there, obviously as soon as possible, it sounds like, but.
Thanks, Taylor. Great question. Mr. Clerk, we do have a calendar of events that we're going to be presenting to the committee at our business planning session, and we're trying to do that on Tuesday, taking a half an hour out on Tuesday near the end of the meeting to discuss some committee business. And with that, we'll establish that calendar. I'm assuming, albeit we are going to have the first report within the next month or so before the committee, once the drafting instructions and the edits are made by members of the committee. Following that, the next report, I'm assuming, is going to be a few weeks after that, Taylor. So depending on what's being talked about on Tuesday at our business planning session, I'm hoping to have that with respect to your timing within the next, say, 4 or 5 weeks on that second report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would I be accurate there, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, on all that. But for the Canada Infrastructure Bank study in particular, I believe it would be useful for the analysts if we could have any drafting instructions, say within the next week or so. That would really be helpful.
Okay, is that fine, Taylor? Good, excellent. Any further questions? With that, once again, to the witnesses, thank you very much for your time today. Very much appreciated. And to members, thank you for your interventions. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Bonne soirée.
Thank you.
Merci.
We're adjourned.
Good evening.